So I'm not sure if this video will help anybody, but I thought I'd make a video as it relates to Davinci Resolve. For those of you who don't know, Davinci Resolve is a video editing program that's released by Blackmagic Design company. They have a free version and they have a studio version, which is about $299 US. The difference between the free version, Davinci Resolve 15, and the studio version is literally probably between 3 and 5% of features, but that is for the pro version is for guys who are working in studios and want to work on same timelines across networks and everything. But pretty much most things are available and you could do great productions with Davinci Resolve 15. So I'm going to just show you how I use it, and I moved across. Let me just create this as YouTube. I moved across from Vegas, used to be Sony Vegas, and had a bit of difficulty in adapting to a new video editor because you're so used to doing things in a certain way. Now you have to learn, and I know most people get very frustrated with the fact that they have to do quick keys and now the things don't work like they used to. Pretty much if you came from Avid or Premiere Pro, there's a set of shortcut keys that you could import. It's a setup feature and have all those shortcut keys. But I would still prefer to create my own unique keys so that I not only adopt a new package, but I start to find out what works best for me. So first things first, if you're working with two screens, this might not be a problem, but if you look at the bottom here, you can still see this is on a Windows PC. All my icons are still here, and sometimes when you're busy working, it kind of gets confused if you are clicking outside and now you come back in and you're working on a timeline. So I find it's best just to let the program take full control of the screen and hide these icons, and you can always get them back if you want to. And the quickest way of doing that is going to Workspace and clicking on full screen. Now I've made a shortcut key, Alt F, and I'll show you how you can set up your quick keys and possibly share which ones I have actually allocated to certain keys for the purpose of editing quickly. So if I click Alt F or I click over here, you'll see that the bar at the bottom disappears and I have a full screen real estate. Now the setup is quite unique in that you have these two bars on the side here. You look at this left one, and let me just click here. So you have this left bar down here and the right bar, and this basically contains information of these three menus. And if you're not using it, if I click on Inspector, it will hide itself away. When I click again, it will make itself appear. This little dialog icon here, if I click on it, it's showing an arrow up, so it's just going to collapse this to the top section. So this area can be divided into a top and a bottom section. So let me show you what I mean. Click there, it's up there, and it frees up the bottom area. And this works the same here. If I do that, the same if I click there, it disappears. So these four menu items can pop down on the side. These three menus can pop down on the side, and if you're not using them, you basically can have the whole screen to yourself. The inspector is quite a crucial tool in that it's context sensitive. So if I'm busy working on the timeline and I select a clip, everything that relates to that clip will be visible in the inspector. So the inspector changes according to whatever I'm selecting. On this side here, we have the effects library, the media tool, index, and sound library that we can function on. Now the temptation is for me to go into everything, so I've just got to avoid getting a bit too much in detail. I'm just trying to give you an overview of how I made the transition. Just first things first, here you have this dim button. So if you're playing audio back and it's a bit too loud, often you'd go and change the volume levels. Here you could change the volume level or just click dim, and it kind of mutes the overall volume, and it just drops it down to a level that doesn't sort of interfere with your working as you're going along, and it does what it says there, just dims the sound. Okay, so first things first, I'm going to go to Workspace here, and you see there's something here that they've got different workspaces. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 workspaces. Okay, and this is Resolve 15. If you look at the bottom here, there's icons 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These workspaces are what makes this program quite unique. Most programs you can open a file and it's visible on your screen, the folders, and then you're busy editing on the same screen, and you're then busy working with audio and color grading all on the same screen. What Resolve does is puts it nice into these separate areas. So when you are working in the one area, your workflow goes clean from one area to the other. And I'll show you a little bit more when I work through a sample project as it goes. Maybe it's just to highlight that the color grading is the tops. Most movies, most people, even if they're using Avid or Premiere Pro or Vegas or one of those software packages, they often would bring it into Resolve to do the color grading. It's the unit standard for color grading, so there's no reason for me to promote that in any other way. It's got tons of features, masking, tracking, everything. Okay, but what is new in Resolve 15 is this tab here, which is Fusion. Fusion is also an industry standard for compositing. So if you're doing 3D mixing with actual video, mixing with all stills, doing animations and all that, that is what it is. So people who use After Effects, HitFilm, Pro software, After Effects, and then Fusion used to be a standalone program. Now it's totally integrated. It's part of Resolve. So a lot of people who used Fusion before are now just downloading Resolve, which is totally free, and they have the full version of Fusion working in there, because the interface with Fusion in Resolve is so much more intuitive. So it's built on it's a total node-based system. Okay. Then we have Fairlight here, the audio. For those of you who know the Fairlight system, the whole audio hardware system, they had their built-in multi-tracking and all those features, mixing and everything in there. That has been also included as an integrated solution. So you could bring in 5.1 sound, multi-tracking, VST plugins can be inserted, etc. And then the last one is the delivery, where you push it out in MP4 or MPEG or MOVs, whatever formats, 4K and everything. So that's where that parameter works in. Okay, so initially I had to kind of get used to understanding that I've got to work through these 4 different zones. But once you get into it, you ask yourself how you've done without it before. Then there's the usual things where you can have your source screen that comes up when you're loading a video and the timeline screen. Okay, so we'll sort of cover that as we go through. What I did initially is, of course, set the screen to full, as I showed you. And then the other thing that I set was I went to Resolve Preferences and went to User Setup and went to Control Mapping. Now, there's tons of other things here which I'm not going to even engage at this level. Just important to say that you can set up your own preset of shortcut keys. In my case here, I've called it RT Resolve keys. Here you see this Adobe, Avid, Final Cut. These are sort of presets that have come across. So if you click on this preset, it will do all the shortcuts that you'd find in Apple Cut Pro. So people who are familiar with those shortcut keys, it will just merge it across for you, so you don't have to get to learn much. I've done it from scratch so that I use what the default is of Resolve, and then I've added a few custom ones for myself. Okay, here's another neat feature. You can make the shortcut keys that you are creating function globally. It can function across all 2, 4, 6 of these features at the bottom. So if a Alt F key does something in edit, it will do this similar thing in Fusion, Color, Fairlight, if you choose it as a global setting. Okay, so when you have it on global and you do a shortcut key, it applies to everything. It will work similarly. Now, of course, for example, Alt F in media, in edit, you might not have an Alt F feature if it doesn't apply. So global is global when common things apply across the lot. What I do is just, I've gone and I said, I'm going to edit. I'm having my shortcut keys apply to edit, and then I customize them. So there's a few things that I've brought in, and along the way I'll actually just show you, like how to get an in-out point, how to create a loop, and how to play through that loop, etc. So I've set it up, and how to do it I'm going to just show you quickly. So if I came in here and I wanted to create a new bin, what you do is opposite here where the shortcut is, you double click and you can put in whatever you want to there. If I do that, it will be a semicolon. When I type that now in the edit section, it will create a new bin. Okay, and then I can save this. It will save it to my set, and when I save it, overall it saves it in the entire program. I can also import sets that I've set up before and bring it in here and export sets, so forth, the usual. Okay, if there is a conflict, it will warn me of the conflict, and then we could either overwrite it or remove it. So I'm going to just remove this because I don't want to allocate that, and I'm not going to save anything. Okay, so that's where you don't save, that's where you set it up. So the workflow that I've adopted, which works nice for me, is I'm going to just click Media Pool, and I tend not even to worry to go to the actual Media Pool section. So when you start off Media Pool, you can bring in video, see what the video is. If your audio, you can get the audio feedback that's happening at the same time, etc. But I kind of keep it simple. When it defaults, it opens up on the edit window, and I access my media through this section. Okay, so for simplicity, I'm going to just pop the screen down right to the bottom so we can see more real estate there. And I'm going to do the same with Inspector and pop it right down. Oops, let's see where we are. Okay, there we go. So we have a video in there. You can see these two sections here, or this is showing that we can have two screens. One will be the source. If I have a video here, it can be in the source, and the other video on the right hand side will demonstrate what is on my timeline. Okay, so what I do is, when I start off with a media pool, I come in here immediately. I'm not going to deal with what smart bins are, they additional fancy features, but I'm going to come in here. I usually do this. I'll right click and say add a bin. Okay, and I'll call this whatever you want to call it. I call mine footage. Then I can add a bin and maybe do audio that I want to bring in separately, and get into edits. Now the reason I do edits is sometimes while I'm busy editing on the timeline, I have some feature that I want to replicate further down the timeline. Now instead of taking it and trying to get it right down, far down the timeline, I can take it and drop it in edits, and when I move down the timeline, I just drag it from edits into that area. That's how it works nicely for this sort of system. And then you can create any other bins that you create here. So I'm going to go in here and just right click and import a piece of video. Let's see where we can get a piece of video in here. Okay, I'm going to use this little old, this is like from the 60s video clip. You can see the beautiful color that it has there. But that was a 8mm movie that we moved into the digital space. Okay, all this is telling you is, do you want to change the project settings to match the video that you're bringing in, or do you want to make the video conform to the project settings? So would you like your timeline frame rate and video to format to match? Then you say don't change. Okay, so it brings it in there. Can you see how quick that is in there? It's right ready to go. There's no still importing and waiting for it to import, as is the case with many other programs. So if I hover over here, you can see I can scroll through there, but there's no reference window here. So easiest way of doing it is just to double click on here. And if I have to take this and drag it across here, on this window you'll see a dialog drag pops out over here, because when you're working on the timeline, there's certain times where you want to pop it at the end of a clip or pop it on top of another clip. Instead of taking it and dragging on the timeline and guessing where it needs to be, you could utilize this system. I'll show it to you a bit later. So I just want to get this on as a source window. So I can double click on here and there it brings in a source window. And of course, when I scroll over here, it does exactly the same. It can take it across there. Okay, so this is my source window. I have nothing on my timeline yet. So if I pop this, oops, let me just get there again, pop that down. So I'm going to just collapse the inspector there so I can have the second window. As soon as a part is dragged down here, it will appear on the side window. So you can choose the kind of formats that you want to use. I'm just showing you how to get footage into the area. Audio will be exactly the same. You can import the audio and so forth. Okay, so what I did first was I started engaging in keys that I would require to use often. Okay, there was a key that I was quite familiar with in Vegas. There was a section that showed a loop like this, and you created a loop section in and out, and you click the loop, and when you clicked play, it went to from the start of the in to the out point, and it just kept looping. Yeah, I found when I created this loop, the in and out, and I clicked play, it just ran right past that area, and that was a bit sort of confusing until I looked up that these features, like in most editors of way back in the day, a loop was just meant to be a loop. However, in Resolve, you have the ability to play that loop back in a specific way. So there are much more features that relate to just playing back a loop. So there's a shortcut key that says, okay, play this back as a loop. And I'm going to show you how I set it out on my keyboard, and that might be the way you would set it out. So let me just take this footage here now, and I want to create a piece of footage that's going to go into this area. So what I'll do is I'll go to edit, and on this piece of footage, so I'm going to go from about there. Shortcut key for most editors is I for an in point, and we take it, say, till about there. Okay, and I'm going to press O, and that's an out point. So I have an in point and an out point there. So I can take this now and drag it on here, and it will just take that in and out segment over here. But because I want to use it as an independent thing later, what I do is I just take it from here and I drag it into the edit window. Then I know I have that little clip for use later. So I can come back in here and maybe move in and out point to another section and drag that here, so I have those two edit points, and then I can create my little snippets if I want to do that edit. But practically, oops, no, you know what I did is I moved it into the footage area, which I don't want to. I want to move it into the edit area. So I'll take it and just drag it down into the edit area. It goes out of my footage. When I go into edit, there I see the two clips. Okay, so this is just for the sake of convenience, cutting out those little clips. Here at the bottom, when we look in this dialog window, this is where we interact with the playback of the actual source video clip. Okay, on this section, it's going to be what is on the timeline. Now, here again, I'm going to go, and if I take this and I drag it from here onto the timeline, it will work like any other editor. I would suggest that you get used to dragging it across onto the timeline window here, and you'll see a dialog pop out here. So I'm going to take this and drag it. Okay, can you see if I move it here, nothing happens. When I move it into the timeline zone, you have these edits here. Now these edits are available in your menu items and other places also. But it's basically saying insert this clip, overwrite an existing clip that you have, replace, etc. So it's giving you the features that you have. Okay, so if I wanted to place this on the timeline here now, I'll go and drag that piece, go to insert, and just release it there. It will put it on the side, which is my timeline, but it's now inserted that clip over here. Okay, these clips at the moment are not attached to each other, so I can take the video and move it. It will show me it's plus 3.16 out of sync with the bottom clip there, Control Z. Or I could draw a marquee around them and make the selection, and I would go to this link clip. Okay, so if I click off there now and I click there, it will be stuck together. I want to unlink it, click there and just deselect it, and then you'll have it also there. Okay, so that's to link the clips there. The other thing is, if you want to navigate in the window, middle mouse button, and you basically drag around. So I'm keeping middle mouse button down, and you're basically panning right across the timeline as you want to. Okay, if you're at a spot here and you want to zoom in, you can keep Alt down and scroll mouse window. So that's how that takes place. And then your cursor, of course, when you click or you drag your cursor, keep left mouse button down and do that. What I've done in addition to that is I've made a shortcut key to zoom in stages. Okay, and arrow up will zoom in stages, arrow down will zoom out in stages. Okay, so I've just done that for myself. Then also there's a shortcut key, if you press Z or Z, that some people would say, that zooms out and zooms in. So if I had to zoom in all the way, when I press Z, it zooms out and then it zooms back to where it was. So the point I get to is, if you're needing to zoom in, to move around, if I had to go and scroll in, I'll go Alt and scroll mouse button, keep middle mouse button down and pull the dialog across. Kind of get your head around those sort of navigations, so that you're quick to move between these things and don't get too frustrated when you're starting to learn how this operates. So I'm going to just arrow down to get back. One thing that I think is important for me when coming from Vegas is that when I want to cut a clip that I'm working with, so I want to splice the clip or slice it as such, what used to happen is that the only way I could get to do that was to go to this additional menu that's over here that has a lot of other features, and go to the blade edit mode, or it was a shortcut B. So you'll click on blade, and when you hover over, you'll see there's a little line. So I'd click there and I'll move down there and click there. And of course, if I had to select both of these clips and go blade and hover there and click, it still would only click where I'm hovering over. Okay, so I'm going to go Control Z with all of that. So even though I was selecting it, the blade would be specific onto which area. There's probably a modifier to cut both at the same time. What I was used to was the ability to, if I had these selected, and initially it was a bit difficult to get used to the fact of drawing over the areas when you want to select them, but you will become familiar with it later. Okay, so I wanted to be able to slice these two. So what I did was I went to go set the actual tool up in the preferences. So if I'll take you to preferences, I'm going to say what shortcut key I used. Let's look at S. S in the timeline menu, split the clip. I made that work for me to split the clip. Okay, so what that means is if I'm on the cursor and I press S, I split the clip there and I've got it. Okay, so that's what I've created a shortcut key for. And then if you select this area, if you press backspace, it's going to take those two clips out and leave the space. It's not going to ripple close the edit. If I select those two and I press the delete button, it ripple edits and it will collapse the actual clip for that area that I've removed there. Okay, so backspace and delete, that's the way they work a bit differently. Another tool that I use on this bar that helps a lot is if I go and I select it and press S and there and press S, when I'm moving here, you'll see that it snaps to the edit point. Okay, and that's because the snapping is on, and you can set your snapping in other areas, the sensitivity and all that sort of thing. But if I'm working here and I'm coming to this edge and I'm wanting to kind of get close by, it's continually snapping. So you can switch it off, or the actual built-in resolve key is N. Okay, and you can remember that by snap in is in there. So if I don't want it to snap there, I just press N. You can see it disables that, and then I can do a fine movement there. And press N again, it will shoot back to snapping. Okay, so I find the S for slicing the clips, the snapping, which is the N for snapping to a particular edit or to the edge of a clip. So wherever there's the edge or start of a clip, you will find it will snap towards that. Okay. The other shortcut key, now you've got to forgive me because I'm not sure which ones were part of the actual Resolve system or whether I named it. I'm actually not too sure. I got so used to using these shortcuts now. I didn't go back to see which ones were originally part of Resolve or which ones I named. But there is a Shift A. So what Shift A does is whatever you selected, it will create an automatically in and out point. Because sometimes if I'm busy with an edit and I want to play this back and see what happens is I can go with the cursor there and press I and go there and press O. But now if I want to say use these two clips and run the playhead across there, then I have to go and set the in there and the out there. So the easier way of doing it is selecting the two clips. So you want to go from there to there and you press Shift A. Now if this is not a standard Resolve thing, I've just made it Shift A, but I think it is a standard one. So you go Shift A and it automatically drops an in and out point. Now here's the other thing. If I have to go and I am now on the timeline, which is this window, and I put on this, which seems to be a repeat area, and I press play. Okay, what happens is, let's see, it goes to the end of the clip and then it starts right at the beginning of the clip again. So if you have a long clip down the way and you're busy playing, it will go and get right to the end of the clip and jump right to the start of the clip, and it will loop the entire edit, the entire production you're doing. If you just want to play this particular area, how do you get to do it? Now there is a command and I'll show you how you, I've basically titled it as R to replay. That's just in my head, so let me show you what I named it as. If you say R here, you will see it says play in to out. So it's playing from your in spot to your out spot. So whenever you select your in and out, it will play it a loop through that area. Okay, so what I've done is I've labeled my shortcut keys next to each other. So R is to play from an in to an out spot, and T is to initiate the loop. Okay, so they're quite close to each other. Now I've got no meaning for T. It's not like T means you know, loop repeat or something. It's just that those two keys are close together. I remember R for running the repeat, and the T is just to switch it on and off. So if I press T, you can see this flips on and off. So if I have a section here, so this is how it works. So if I go, okay, this section, Shift A, it makes that selection, T to put it there, and R, and then it will loop through that area. So if I have any other edits here, it will keep looping for me. And when I'm done, of course, I can press spacebar. Or spacebar is just for normal playing. So if I press spacebar, it's going to run right past the out point. Okay, so playing spacebar runs it normally. And then just while I'm at it, you know, the J, K, and L keys. For anyone who does editing, L is to move forward, J is to move back, and K is to stop. So those keys are standard across all editors. But what is also nice is if you want to move one frame at a time in a direction, I can press K and move, keep K down and press L, and it will jump one frame forward in that direction. Or I can keep K down and press J once at a time. So I just tap, tap, tap. It will move one frame at a time, forward or back. Okay, so again, if I wanted to play these two clips, I basically can select them, or you could do the select and keep shift down to select the other one, as normal Windows things work. So if I have those two, all I go is I say Shift A. So Shift all means basically create the in and out for both, and we'll put it there. Okay. Okay, now there's no reason why this works this way. I've just named it as G. G just means gone, because I'm working with this in and out points a lot, and I do it quite often when I'm editing. I just made G a quick key for go away kind of thing. Okay, so you make the things that make sense to you. So I press G, you'll see the in and out disappears. Okay, so those are the few keys that I use. I'm on this section. I now just go Shift A, and then T to put on and off, and R to play. Okay, then there's another thing that works well for me now while I'm working and I'm seeing the edit happen. Sometimes you want to see the production on the full screen. Now if you're working with the second screen, that's fine. You don't actually even have to worry about this. But for us mere mortals who are working on our laptops and want to see a full screen representation, what I've got, my Alt F key is to make the program run full screen, take away the bar at the bottom. So I remember that F is for full screen in the different contexts. Alt F is to make my program consume the whole full screen. Control F is to take the timeline and put it into a full screen mode. So now if I press R, it's going to play through that loop for me. Okay, and it will flip through the loop again. Okay, press Control F, it pulls me out of that. Press spacebar to stop it there. Okay, so hopefully you're getting the idea that we now are able to have a couple of good edits as we're working. So Alt and scroll mouse wheel to get there, move the cursor, scroll close by, in and out, and all that sort of stuff. Interesting enough, you've seen this little squiggle on these clips. Okay, these are actual extra dialogues that when you're working on the clip, if you click that dialogue, that little thing, and you'll find when I do an edit on top here, it will show me a little edit window like that and a little diamond area. They are just indications that there's something embedded inside this particular clip that you can edit in the timeline itself. Let me show you. If I click here, can you see there's something that pops down here that shows me that I can, let me just move all of these things up. So it's showing me that I can create an edit over here. Okay, now this edit is direct here in that if I want to create a node here that I can modify, I can basically click Alt down, and if I click there or click there, it will create some sort of modification. Now if I hover over here, you can see it says volume. So if I wanted to at this point be able to drop the volume down, I could do that. Alt, click there, take the volume up again. So you'll have the volume playing and it will go down and come up there. Okay, so this is familiar if you're working with audio envelopes and so forth, but this translates into the video editor also. Now, very interesting, remember we were speaking earlier about the inspector window. So if I'm on here, I could actually have access to these areas through the inspector window. So if I click on, I'm going to collapse this pool here, maybe just take it up a bit so that I can have more real estate here, and then I'm going to bring I'm going to take my source window away and just make a single window, and then drop the inspector down here so I can see what's happening, and then click there so it can take the whole area down here. Okay, so you can see how that all works now. Because I'm on an audio clip now, I have a whole lot of features from a EQ, and then of course if I go into the other edit windows, I can work with VSTs and all that, but that's for another time. So we are sitting here, and interesting, if I move this on to that area, that little node I've created, can you see there's something that lights up here? All of these areas with the diamonds here, these are all animatable keyframes of each of these aspects. So if we look at this now, we are saying on the volume clip, when I get to this area here, it shows red, there's a keyframe. If I move off it, that will go off. You'll see it disappears. As I hit onto the keyframe, it's showing me that is activated with something. Now if I move to the next keyframe, it's going to go from that volume of 0 dB down to 24. Look what happens. I'm going to just switch the snap off so that it doesn't snap onto this area. Okay, and if I move, look what happens to the volume here. As I move, can you see it's dropping down? It's created a keyframe at the next spot. Now I can't get exactly onto that next spot. You can see there's a little red that flickers there. By chance, I've got onto that. So if I had the snap on, of course, then I'll easier be able to get onto that area. And when I move to the next one, so those are 3 keyframes. Now, if I wanted to edit this on its own, I'm going to just reset this. I'll go there and click this button for volume. Okay, so I'll reset it. I can even go on top there and reset everything okay, so we got on 0. So in the same way I could get here, and at this point I could click create a keyframe. I could move to the next area, and now because I've created one keyframe, when I do an adjustment it automatically will create a keyframe. So I'm going to drop the volume, see what happens here on the left. Okay, and then I move to the next place and it creates a keyframe. So all I'm doing is in this area, left mouse button clicking and dragging in whichever direction, and it creates another keyframe. Okay, same thing happens with all of these areas. If I put on the clip EQ, well, I'm taking a guess here now whether I'd be able to, well, I'm not sure if I could animate the EQ. Let's leave that for another time. So this is pitch change, and these things are all context sensitive to an audio clip. If I clip, I'm going to reset this now, but if I collapse this and I'm going to click onto a video, look what happens. You immediately get things like the ability to change the opacity, and everything works exactly the same as far as creating these keyframes. But at the moment you see there's nothing on here that's similar to the audio started with a volume that by default shows. Here's nothing here because we haven't made any modifications. So if I come to this here on the clip and I drop in a keyframe, I'm engaging it, and from then onwards any alteration I do on this particular setting will change. So if I click on top here with this one, it will activate all of them. So all these features will now be live for automatically keyframing. So when I move the head to another place and I do an alteration, it keyframes in that area. So I'm on snap now, so I go right to the start of the clip, and let me say, you know, when we usually use transition fade in and all that, we've got a transition effect and we drop it on there. There are effects that work that way, but what you're going to find out that works great here is you're going to start creating these keyframes on the fly for yourself quickly. So let's say I start here and I say opacity is, I wanted to make it fade in from nothing. So I create a keyframe and I drop the opacity right down. So I basically create it from there. I'm going to move, say, to this spot. And remember, if you don't want it to snap, you can switch it off. But say I'm going to move from there to this spot. And at this spot now, I'm not going to create a keyframe because it's already, I've made the first keyframe. So all I have to do is make the adjustment. So I go opacity, I'll take it right up to 100%. Okay. Now you notice what happened? There's 2 little icons that come here. And if I click on the first one, that one is actually showing me, if I hover over it, it's the opacity. If I click in the, let me just drop that down, take this up so we can see it a bit better. But if I click on the second one, it's actually showing me where the keyframe exists. So the first one is the actual parameter, and the other one is at a global setting showing me where the actual keyframe exists. So I can grab that keyframe with the left mouse and drag it further down the line so that the activity will start there, say for example opacity 100, and it will move, or opacity 0 and move to 100 there. Or if I wanted to move the keyframe a bit closer, I could do that. Okay, so this diamond is to shift the keyframes around. The other one is the actual parameters that you add to each of those keyframes. So what I've just done now is I've said from the start, and I'm going to press R to loop play it. You can see it will fade in, go from black, fade in, and to maybe accentuate it, I am just going to, let me just move this keyframe further down the line so it's going to stay darker for longer, and then fade in. Okay, so that's what makes this program very unique, in that you edit it here, you have the parameters and it's visible, you can animate them all. So I'm going to do a transform. I'm actually going to remove the actual opacity. I just click there, it removes that, and you see there's no effects on there. There's no little icons on the side. I'm removing the opacity because I'm going to use another effect. I can use different ones all together, but I want you to see the image while I'm working on this. So at this one, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to start with it being a larger zoomed in object. So I'm going to click over here, which says zoom. Now you ask yourself, can I only work in this area because this is locked? X to Y is locked. So if I zoom here, it's going to do the zooming. So I'm right at the start creating a keyframe. Let me just reset that. So can I only work here? With the mouse, I can scroll in and out on this viewport. Isn't there a way that I can actually physically work and size it on here? Yes, there is a way. If you look here in this dialog, you'll see this drop down, and one of it is the default one. If you click it down, it says transform. There's others that say crop, and this cropping feature is available here also for animation. But if you want to work right on the visual, you click transform. That will light up and it will form a bounding box there. Okay, so now we're right at the start. We say let's create a keyframe, and I'm going to move it a little bit down, and then at this point, if I size it here or move this here, it will create another keyframe. If you feel you want to click keyframe before you do the movement, that's up to you, but it will automatically start it. Let me show you. Sometimes if you hover over here and you can't select it properly, you actually maybe need to just zoom in a bit. Mouse, middle button, down, keep it down, and then you can pan this object around. Mouse scroll is in and out. So if I get here and I want to scroll it bigger, I hover here, click in the corner, and if you watch under transform on the, let me just go, if you watch what happens here, as I start to zoom it now, size it differently, it will create its own keyframe because I've already created a keyframe on this track. If I click there and zoom there, it turns all red, and then I pull it out there, and I can move it to the next section, and I can zoom it in small. Okay, so if we play it now, I'm going to just disable that. If we play it now, it will zoom in and zoom out. Okay, so you've actually created full animation keyframes. Now, while we're busy doing that, let's say we start off and we have it there, but at this point I still wanted to keep its rotation correct. So I go to the rotation area. Let me see where we are with rotation. Yeah, I'm going to create a keyframe. So from the start to there, the rotation is going to stay as per normal. Okay, and then I'm going to take it a little bit down, and I am going to maybe till this point, and I'm going to do a rotation of the clip. Okay, and I could rotate it using this transform also. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to be zooming out and rotating at the same time. So if I press R to play between my in and out point, zoom out and rotate. Zoom in, rotate. Okay, so I hope you get the idea. I mean, if you have all the features here, let's just entertain ourselves with one more. So from this point, we want to move to there, and we want to actually use the crop features. Okay, so I'm going to click there and crop the picture from that side, move a little bit there, and then crop the picture from that side. Okay, so oops, I've done that, but I haven't created keyframes here. If I had selected composite keyframe, it would be working on all of them, but I've been selecting individual ones. So if we play this now, it probably, oh no, it did do it. That's interesting. I think I might have clicked on here. Okay, so we're having the crop being animated, the rotate being animated, and you can see where you could go to with all of these things. It just becomes extremely, extremely powerful. So that's how we are able to use all of these animated features on the side. And that's just the beginning. Okay, you could actually at this stage, if you wanted to take this clip and modify it, you could go to the Fusion tab, and I'm going to just click here. Now remember, this is not a bridge to Fusion. This is Fusion that exists inside Resolve. So you're not going to Fusion and editing and then bringing it back into Resolve. This is part of Resolve. So you have your total node section here. For those who have worked with Fusion, this is all your different area, and these are nodes that you work with, etc. It's another level here, and I'm not even going to worry about that. So you'd go do your editing in this area with nodes and maskings and all the fancy stuff. And then when you've got it there, you basically click on the edit, and that modification is built into that clip as you are busy working. So that's extremely, extremely powerful. Okay, so for most of my edits now, this is what happens. Now, another thing that I'd like to just show you that is really phenomenal. If you go to Effects, you have Video Transitions, which is your normal, like if I want to go a blur dissolve between these two. How it works is you basically hover over in between, and if you click, you'll see it highlights sort of green in between. Then you can take, let's say, cross dissolve, and if you drag it there, can you see that little tags go either side? And let's zoom in that. If I click on that transition, again, context sensitive inspector pops out and gives me the option to say start on the edit, which will move it to the right. So as it gets to the edit, the transition actually starts to act. Center on edit, which is by default pulls in there, or end on edit. Okay, so you can do that, have it all the different layers and everything, and then transition. So this is how this section works, and then you have a lot of other features that go with it. How long you want to make, how many frames you want to make it. You can see it there stretching on the dialog, or you can just hover there and stretch it yourself as to how you want to create the transitions. So these are transitions that function here. There's a nice powerful one called Smooth Cut. I don't know if you have the situation, you're busy videoing and then you do a second take, but they're sitting in the same position and there's this jerk of somebody talking and there's a little jerk. The smooth cut works. You probably do a 3 or 4 frame smooth cut, which is a transition between the two clips, and it in a quite incredible sense merges the two, so you don't have that sort of jagged jerk between the two. Okay, but if I wanted to change this, I just take that and hover over that existing one and it will replace it there. Okay, so you have all the features that go with it, and then of course you can scroll down and have your other features that you have, your other video transitions. If you're using the stuff where you're having a slide transition and all that, you can do all the settings, and there's so many of them, tons of them, but it's as easy as that. If you want to do your customization, it's like I showed you earlier on. So that was video transitions. Then you have your audio transitions, which is pretty basic in here. But if you want to go do your fancy editing, you'll go to the editing module, which if I just click on Fairlight here now, then you are working in a total different space where there's a whole lot of different editing features. There's plugins, there's stacks and stacks of different stuff. Too much to cover in this session. So let's just get back to our edit window. I'm going to take that transition away, and to remove it, it's you select it and backspace. Okay, and it will take it away there. Here's the thing that I really want to show you. Now you have titles that are here. These are simple lower third titles. So you drag it across, and of course it works like anything else when it just basically puts a title down at the bottom over there, and if you want to move the title, yes, you can grab the dialog box, select the clip and select that dialog box, and then move the title to where you want to, or size it to where you want to, so forth. So I mean, it pretty much works like I showed you early on. But here's now also the other thing. It's the context window. You have all these editing features, and trust me, it is awesome editing features that you have the ability to do. In addition to that, you have a video window, and you'd be familiar with this now, as I showed you earlier. The video window does exactly the same with the zooming, panning, the keyframing, translating it on the page, and everything is animatable. So what we showed you earlier with a video clip is all available when you're editing any text. and then you have the separate text window where you're able to do all the modifications and fonts and transitions and that sort of thing. But in addition to this, okay, these are lower thirds, and then you have other options that you have in. But in addition to this, if we scroll down to the bottom, yes, Fusion titles. Now these Fusion titles are actual titles that are animated and developed all in Fusion, and as time goes on, they probably will bring a lot more on board as guys start to develop fancier Fusion titles and so forth. I know I used to work with Titler Pro when I worked with Vegas, and it's like a totally separate program. You've got to go work in there, and this thing is just another level. So if you're into Fusion, if guys are into Fusion, they can write their own sophisticated titling or whatever they want to build into that. There's really no limit on that. But here you have a set of titles that is basically, let me just remove this here and show you one of them. So say I go circling text. Now the difference between a title like this is that this is basically been programmed in Fusion, and it has certain editable windows. So if I go here, I can go in and do a whole lot of edits. Collapse that. The ring control, yeah, at the moment has got these exclamations. I could probably change the color of them maybe to an orange color. So it basically has abilities to edit all the features of the actual text titler that is coming through here. So this text area has been written in Fusion, and it has all the abilities to modify these parameters based on what was written in Fusion. Okay, so what you can do here is basically modify the things that the person who put this Fusion title together has given you. Okay, but the flexibility is quite awesome here, even without getting into doing anything on your own. But the one, oh, let me just show you this. As I'm on this here, you notice this line that comes on top here. The red line is showing that it needs still to be rendered. So it creates it's a folder where it creates a cache of these files. And once it has the cache, it's able to play it back more smoothly, because remember, these are complicated text and animation stuff that has been built in with this particular program. To help you play back efficiently, I'm going to just scroll here. To help you play back efficiently, let me just go while I'm at it. Under Playback tab, you have a proxy mode which will play back the video preview in half or quarter resolution. That will just speed up the actual, when you have transitions and different things like a Fusion title that's in there. And then also under render cache, I would suggest using the smart option here. So it intuitively works out where the resolutions work and then applies that. So you can see here this blue area means that will play smoothly. However, this area is still busy preparing for creating a cache to create that. So if I go here now and I press R to play, can you see it? It has a bit of a sticky area, and it will just loop around, and it's going to take a bit of time to create. There you see it's starting to turn blue. So it's creating a cache of that specific animation so that it will be able to play totally smooth. There you can see now it's playing quite smooth in that area. Of course, when you make a modification now, it's going to have to do a re-render. But this is the setting that I use. I'll go half resolution, or sometimes I'll just leave it on normal play, and render cache is smart. Okay, so it's not like you play it and then the thing gets stuck, then you've got to wait for it. Once it creates the blue line, it pretty much has an offline rendered file that it will reference and play through smoothly with transitions and so forth. This is as powerful as you get it, but I will show you what I use most of the time. So I'm going to click on this here, backspace. This is the one that I use most of the time. This is a text editor like we have there, but it's got text plus. So what this is busy doing, this takes the power of a normal text that you put on the screen, but to that it adds kind of special abilities that exist in Fusion without you going to create any Fusion titles. So you don't have to go into Fusion. Let me show you. If I select this area and I drag it across here, it is like any other text title editor. We have the title there, and if I have this selected, of course, here you see the dialog pops up. And if I scroll here, there's certain unique things that appear here. And this is a Fusion title. It's a text plus. By that, it means that I can do certain animations of certain features of this text. Let me show you, for example, if I start at the beginning of this text and I come down here, it works slightly different in that you don't have a keyframer, but if you click here, right on, I'm going to pull this tab down here. Can you see what happens? It writes the text on. If I pull it right down, right click on here and say animate, and I right click and say set a keyframe, and then I move the head to about there, and now I move the title to the end, and I right click and I say set a keyframe. Can you see what happens? It's going to go. As you look here on this side here, just watch what happens here as the playhead moves across. It actually writes the title out. So if I have to put in, I'm going to just put in a smaller text, and I'm going to play hello. This is YouTube. Okay, and then I'm going to just let it play through there. Let's see where we are. Click there. Oops, YouTuber. Okay, can you see there? It's now getting into the blue, and there you'll see it starts where the red areas is. It will still be caching. So as soon as it's done, and you don't have to play it in loop to cache it. You can just wait while it caches. But there we go. Hello, this is a YouTuber, and I can, if I pause here and grab this text and put it down here at the bottom and just play it. Can you see whenever I move it in another area, it needs to cache again because it's intelligently rendering it in the areas that you're working on. But once that cache is done, there we go. Hello, this is a YouTuber. And if you don't make any movements on this existing clip, then pretty much it will play smoothly when you come to this area again, because it's got this cache in memory. Okay, and that smart user, I think it's got to do with the fact that it only renders what you are busy working with. I can see this area is red here, so it doesn't waste energy in going to render the entire process. Okay, so it will just render between. So that's how it fits together. And here's another interesting thing. We have all these editing features of the text itself. We go down to advanced. There's some interesting other features with kerning and that. And then look at this. If I go onto this area, there's a whole new set, a whole new world there. There's a whole new world of manipulation. You can create all. Look here, it's just kind of endless. You can pull in visuals. It is quite incredible. This entire menu set here is all on different features that you have that you can set and animate through here. And in addition to that, remember we had the video and the others? All those video editing features work on it also. So you can create lower thirds, you can create animations, you can do all of your stuff quite incredibly. So I think it's quite brilliant in the way that it works. So that's the features with the text titling. And if you're wanting to create, for example, a lower third with an area across, it's as easy as going to the generator, and I'm going to just grab this window and drag this up, and underneath this I'm going to create a generator over here, a solid color. So I'm going to pull that solid color down here, and the solid color basically covers the whole screen. So if I select that solid cover, I'm going to change the color. Let's go maybe to whatever orange color. Okay. And then I can grab here and size it accordingly, or I can just go in here. And remember, I'm not creating a keyframe, so it's not going to animate. It's just taking it down to that size. So I can move that there. Wherever, let's move it down off the screen. Okay, let me just make it a a bit thicker. Move it a bit up here. Okay, so here we go. Let me show you how we can get to an animation, and I think I'll round off this session with you. So if we are there, the text is coming out. So if I play it across, the text runs at that speed. So it basically, text starts sort of quite early here to run right across. So if I want this bar to animate across, maybe I should take the text about here. So I'm dragging the text to start a bit later. So, okay, let me just do it even a bit here, because what I want to do is the bar to come out. So text starts, let's say text is going to start about on that area. So this bar is going to start animating. By the time it gets there, it's going to pretty much be most of the way out. Okay, so the bar itself, I'm going to say, I'm going to, oops, let's Control Z there. I'm going to move this out of the way. Okay, so I've got it totally out of the way. Where are we? Yeah, totally off the screen. Let me just move it here. Now it's not going to animate because I haven't animated it yet. So I select the color bar right at the start. So at this point I'm going to now make a keyframe, and it's going to keyframe at the position where it is now. So I want, by the time this head reaches the text, when the text is going to start, that bar is going to be across here. So at this point here on this solid, I am going to now move the position across, say about there. Let's move it there. Now I can grab on the screen and drag it, but then I haven't got much control over it. So it takes a bit of sort of getting used to here, but you'll get used to it quickly. So say I'm going to move it only as far as that goes. So by the time this thing drags across, the text will start writing. Okay, so if I press R, okay, I'm going to just deselect this, and I'm going to press Control F for full screen. Okay, so you can see there I've created an animation, and hello, this is YouTuber. Okay, so hopefully you can see the power of where we're going to. There's pretty nothing that you can't do. That's 80% of the way of you doing your edits, from animating things across the screen, lower thirds, and let's say, just for a sake, that if I wanted to bring this across, and by this space here at this point I actually want to change this. Let's see if I can do this before I make a crazy promise about it. Okay, the solid color, I wonder if okay, now I need to get that orange color. There might be other ways that I can actually animate the colors of it, but for now let's say at this point I'm going to put a keyframe with opacity, and at about that point I'm going to drop the opacity down to a very light color. Okay, so what we're doing is we're starting off moving the bar across, solid bar across. When it gets there, the text starts to scroll. When it gets about this area, it's going to fade out the actual color of that bar, and everything is animated. So I can go Control F for full screen, press R to start playing from in to out position. Okay, there you can see it goes bright orange, and then it starts to fade out. So all of that has been animated in the way we work. And it's pretty much now up to your creativity as to how you're going to let the different parts work as you work along. Okay, so hopefully that's been of help. Middle button, drag across, and so forth. And there's, certain other things that you'll get familiar with, but this is just to show you why I'm so excited about using this tool, is because you have so much flexibility, so much creativity that you can use. And yes, with other editors you might be used to doing certain stuff, but it's just going to take a short while, and before you know it, you are going to be able to work brilliantly with a set of tools. I haven't covered probably about 1% of the features of this program, but it's all there. And OpenEffects you can bring in. OpenEffects is an open source area, so if I had to move between, say, I'm going to just grab the end here and pull this just to get this transition between these two. If I have to drag, let's say, zoom blur, let me see if I can put it in there. Does it work? Or I drop it onto this area. Okay, let me not confuse matters further. I think I just put it onto that clip itself, which is another thing. Okay, let me not confuse things. So yeah, hopefully this has given you a bit of inspiration to get into Resolve, and I'll probably put more targeted videos of Resolve about specific features later on. This was just like a very mushy kind of me getting involved with Resolve and why I'm so excited about where it's going to, and my transition basically from Vegas or Sony Vegas. I mean, I looked at their version 16 and you know, they got tracking and all that on, and pretty much if you go to the Fusion tab, you can do brilliant tracking, or even in the color tab with it, you can do, I mean, there's tracking tools, there's phenomenal other tools. Okay, so you're not going to run into trouble if you get into Resolve 15 and beyond. The Blackmagic company is really at the cutting edge, and they've developed the technology. Their render times are almost half to 3/4 faster than most others. Their listening to their community is just at another level. Okay, so trust me, like I said, 1, 2, or 3% of what this program is about is what you heard now from me, although it's taken this while just to share it with you. But there's tons more. So hopefully you get encouraged and maybe decide to, you know, put your feet in the water with getting into Resolve. So have a fantastic day and God bless you.